With the three outers, I'd almost ignore them because I wouldn't read them. Just the same thing, I wouldn't read them to anybody personally. It's whole generational. Uranus is the 7-year cycle, and we go through 7-year fads, 7-year attitudes to what's exciting or shocking. Neptune, we never, and Pluto, we don't see them, but they're generational factors of where we believe when Neptune, where our gullibility is, where our visions are, our dreams are, and each generation is trying to find the dream for the sign Neptune's in, and is running across fears and confrontations around where Pluto is, and is looking for excitement where Uranus is. So these planets, when they conjunct or square each other, they do so for a good year or more. They go so for a long time, and everybody goes through it. Some people, for people to have it, they're very strong generational factors. But I wouldn't be quick to try and interpret this is stressful against this or this is that. The three are just out there like wild cards. They're beyond the planets you can see. They're inner influences that are there. But the stress won't show so much because Neptune is hitting Uranus or Pluto. It's a little bit there, but it's how it bounces from there and comes down to hit any of the inner planets that you will see the outer planets affect. So Uranus square or oppose the stressful aspects of Uranus to Neptune, it might add a vision to excitement. You know, like it could cause independent dreams or independent, you'll never believe what I had my own experience, nobody's ever gone through this. It creates radicalism, but often these things come from wars, famines, immigrations, big changes. But people in stable situations will still have these aspects. Everybody in the world born in a certain year will have these aspects and have it for their whole life. But the more faster moving ones make the personal take on how they work. So you'll see the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto more clearly to the houses and to how they affect planets. Really, you could watch the planets from Jupiter and out, how they affect Mars and in. And those ones you'll see more clearly. That's where the major work in astrology goes. So you can move it up to try, when you try and get a sense of Jupiter or a sense of Saturn, then you can include these three outer planets. But most extremes, you'll see the three outer planets making stressful aspects of Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars. Those you can distinctly see. Are except the pencil up. When it gets to Jupiter and Saturn, a little harder to see. It takes time to develop those experiences, get enough charts, see enough people have gone through it, run into it enough times to begin to get a sense of it based on the factor of where you're coming from. So, what am I going to do? Am I going to? Yeah, okay. So I don't like. You can speculate. You can write socially conscious things. Each of the planets were kind of discovered. Uranus was the what was it? It was the steam power and steam energy. Neptune was electrical energy. Neptune was oil energy and its discovery and the shipping. And Pluto was nuclear energy over each a century or so apart. And each having social, cultural revolutions based on them and different attitudes that have come into the world. So it's how we tap into these outer things. So in India, they only use planets up to Saturn. They don't add the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They're not seen. But there's some value for that. But we will see the effects of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto in transits and in progressions very clearly. And you can see them across the natal chart as they affect the personal planets. But Uranus to Neptune, Uranus to Pluto, it's hard to get a focus or a keyword or something for it. There's just the energy presence and they're ganging, those two energies are ganging up. And they hold a potential complex for that whole generation. And anyone has a planet making a square, conjunction, or opposition to any one of these two planets that are in stress, they're going to suck that up, and that's going to magnify the pressure going in. Again, Neptune to Pluto happens once every, they come together 2 cycles of Neptune to 1 cycle. Really, it's about every 500 years there's a Neptune-Pluto conjunction. So the last Neptune-Pluto conjunction was in 1892 in Gemini. In fact, every conjunction of Neptune and Pluto for the last 10,000 years has happened in Gemini. But Neptune, the visionary Neptune and the Plutonian truth and reality, those extremes, they come together. What happened in 1892, North America was discovered, the automobile discovered, and the airplane was discovered. So the automobile, airplane, and North America, and one second, and the printing, no, it wasn't the printing press, it was three things, but definitely the automobile and the airplane were two of the things that affected the way we think, and great visions came through at that time. But it's a time that everybody in the world will experience, but somebody living up to it, somebody tuned into it and brought the energy through. The whole world was bringing it through, but some people used it for personal creative things, for exceptional things. But I wouldn't worry about the three aspects to these outer planet aspects themselves as making bigger definitions in chart. The basic rule is the outer planet throws its energy to the inner planet, not the other way around. But when we're working with the Moon, Mercury, Venus, they affect each other. They can affect each other. But as you get out more and more so, the planets, the slower moving planet affects the faster moving planet and dumps it down. And by the time you do the chart, you see the planets, you see the signs. When you start working through the aspects, you can just look at, oh, here's this stress, here's that stress. I wouldn't do that. Wait a second. When you're going to look at the aspects, look at one planet thoroughly. Look at the sign it's in, look at and each of the categories, look at the house it's in each of the categories, and look at what stress is coming. You're just seeing how much stress is coming to the planet. So no matter what stress is there, you can still live, you have to deal with it. That's normal for you, whether it's an outer planet or not. So you start with those stress factors. So you look at one planet and you see how the stress factors build up and what are the ones that are predominant for you in functioning with that planet. So each planet's a function. The personal ones, how we think, how we make choices or evaluate, what we feel is secure, our memories, our reflections, those functions, we can dramatically see the distinctions of stress from a Mars or stress from a Saturn or from a Neptune. We begin to sense, oh, I have this type of stress. So it's not just stress. There's all these different layers of stress that come in and different kinds of stress that have different good and bad or different repercussions. And for the beginning natal chart, it's just enough to think, is it easy or is it difficult? What's the stress? What's the non-stress? You know, and it's enough to work with aspects just like that for the first 1,000 charts you do anyways. Later on we can go deeper in this, but this depth usually comes as we get into progressions and you start to see the phases that planets move through. You can read the phases that an aspect, every planet has an aspect, every aspect is some phase of the cycle. It's during some phase of the cycle between those two planets. So you can technically go in and see the phase between the Moon and Mercury, Moon, Sun, Moon, Venus, Moon, Mars, and you can see what phase each planet is that further accentuates the meaning of the aspect. Right now, I don't suggest you do it. I suggest it's enough. You don't have to go this detailed into it. I went into way more detail than you would in looking at a chart. It's enough to look at these stress factors, but if you look at them all, you just get too much at once. If you take one planet and look at it one planet at a time, and you look through it, you see that planet and its function and stress. And I can say this is the prep work for doing someone's chart. So you always want to look at the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Mars, and look at the stress factors around it one at a time, and take 5 minutes on each or so, or 15, and that's your prep work to tuning into each of those planets. Then when you're seeing the transits to come to something, you can see which of these planets is being triggered, but you understand how it's behaving and how that person processes. You're not going to be able to reach someone to teach them if you don't teach them in a way that aligns with their way of processing. So, boy, a lot of people search around the world trying to find someplace they can learn that gives them information in the way they process. But a lot of times we have to put up with stuff that's not the way we process and try and pick out what we can that's useful to us. Okay, I think I'm done on the aspects. So this is pretty much the end of the class to here, but I want to just talk a little bit around, and if you have questions, we could throw some things in, but I will go into putting this whole thing a bit more together and go through this a couple more times. We have the pattern types and the moon phases, which are simple generations and the pattern types are based on the aspects, the shape of the number of aspects, which ones are there. The moon phases are the phases for the aspects of the moon to the sun. So really, this is all the basic foundations. It's the basic alphabet of putting together an understanding of character of someone's chart. When you have your natal chart, that's your chart for your lifetime. You're working with that attitude and those ways for your lifetime. The world doesn't stop cutting as you got in. Each planet keeps moving, like hands of a clock, and they move around. So the more they move around, the further away they get away from where they were when you were born. So the longer we live, the further away the planets have gotten from their natal position, and they've established cycles and positions around it. But the more effort it is then to be our natal chart, to be ourselves. So it's always an effort. It doesn't, oh, something get easy, I'm older, it's easier. No, there's always an effort to assimilate this and to integrate it into who I am, into my natal chart. The whole essence of healing and using astrology is taking the transits that are challenging people and the progressions that are showing the evolution of people and making it work for that character. You're making it healing and making it work better in the natal chart. You're always struggling to be your natal chart, to working with it, to countering the difficult, to countering the negative, to making it better or more healing or more healthy or more growth oriented. So we're always going beyond today. We're always going into the unknown of tomorrow. Everybody is. And the planets are always in the similar places the same day, but they affect each of us uniquely. You know, and maybe there's somewhere between 400 or 500 to 1,000 people born, maybe about 1,000 people born any minute of a day, like around the world. Maybe it's 400 or 500, but every minute. But there's so many people being born every minute. There's always a large group of people across all different cultures having this same chart.